Hi there, Malcolm here with my 164th Booktube video, and today I'll be bringing you my January wrap-up and February TBR. Quite a lot to get through, so let's get cracking. So I could tell you I finished 15 books in the month of January, totalling 2,724 pages, which is an increase of 562 pages over last year. So, hey, off to a great start. Can we keep it going? So first off is Out of the Deep Woods. This is book one of the Sweet Tooth graphic novel series. I've not seen the show. I might have to give it a try at some point. Spotted this in the library and thought give it a go. Basically, it's a post-apocalyptic setting. There's been a deadly disease that has wiped out most of the planet, and all the babies born have some sort of weird human hybrid aspect to them. And the boy in this story, Sweet Tooth, who's so named because he does like his chocolate, has deer ears and antlers. The story starts off with him living with his father in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, and his father happens to succumb to this illness, leaving the boy on his own. He's forced to leave the cabin and falls under the protection of a violent man because for some reason hybrid children are highly sought after. And so here we go, another post-apocalyptic story, but with some interesting twists. What caused this disease? Why are the babies all hybrids? And is there a link between the two? Must say not an awful lot happens in this one. It's very much a road trip as we get to see this new world. Sort of a lot of the similar sort of things that we've seen in other post-apocalyptic type settings. Lots of rundown areas, lots of bad men. Law and order is a thing of the past. But certainly there are quite a few questions regarding, and of course there are other questions on why things are happening. And the story concludes with the betrayal. I won't give away more than that. I quite enjoyed it. The artwork was passable. I mean, it's not quite to my taste, but it was fine. I'd say it's worth buying. And then I finished reading Revenger by Alistair Reynolds to my wife. This is book one of the trilogy. Basically think space pirates meets Firefly, set in the far, 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 far off distant future, but still in the solar system, or what's left of it. A pair of sisters take a ride on a ship, which is then set upon by the fearsome pirate Bosa Senon, and one is taken, and one is left barely alive. And she vows to have her revenge, and this is a story of her trying to track down the pirate and rescue her sister before it's too late. This was a reread for me, but I absolutely loved it the first time, and absolutely loved reading it again aloud to my wife. Told from the point of view of Furioness, the sister who wasn't taken, and she has to become something else in order to achieve her ambitions. Full of adventure, pirates and intrigue. There's a lot going on in this universe with a really interesting writing style. Absolutely love it. Booktastic. And then I read In Captivity, book two of the Sweet Tooth series. A very satisfying continuation of the story. I can't really give away too much due to spoilers, but yeah, really good. A whole pile of Buffy the Vampire Slayer graphic novels. Now, I'm not going to go through all these all one by one because that would just take forever, and frankly I can't quite remember them all individually. I've almost read one a day. It was a very successful reading time. But to just quickly whiz through, Vive et Las Buffy, a direct sequel to The Origin, the graphic novel of the original film. So she's burnt down the school, she's in trouble with her parents who are beginning to think about splitting, and she goes to Las Vegas to take on a vampire nest, having embraced to a degree her vampire slaying destiny. Much stronger than the original graphic novel. This was actually a lot of fun, so I say buy it. And Slayer Interrupted is the last prequel to the TV show really, and this one, Buffy's sister discovers her diary, resulting in her ending up in a mental institution, and of course Buffy can't go anywhere without there being some sort of vampiric demonic activity going on. Another really good, strong story. It's really interesting that for these two prequel stories, they included Dawn, who obviously wasn't actually her sister at this point, because she didn't exist, but then she always did exist, and this is when she was always existing when she didn't exist. Anyway, interesting choice. The Stakes of the Heart, Buffy's parents are splitting up now, and there's a demon that deals with misery. It's kind of interesting, but I think gets lost a bit on its way. Worth reading though. And sorry, this is the final prequel of the series. They do follow Giles as well in the Watchers Council as he's trying to become the next Watcher. So it does bounce between Buffy and Giles as they do in the previous books as well. Yeah, it was alright, worth reading. And the Dust Waltz, it was worth reading. Standard Buffy story really. Play with Fire is actually a couple of shorter stories. Both really enjoyable. Buy it. Ring of Fire, another good one, worth buying. Another good collection of short stories, The Remaining Sunlight. Uninvited Guests, more short stories, another buy it. And Bad Blood. It was alright, worth reading. And then I finally finished Star Wars Vision of the Future by Timothy Zahn. This is book 2 of the Hand of Thrawn duology. And a big fat book this was too. Really enjoyed it, but I think the size of the book kind of encouraged me to read all the graphic novels. So you got Luke, Mara Jade, Lando, Han Solo, and a whole bunch of other characters all over the galaxy doing their own thing. Lots of threads to be tied up together from what happened in the first book, Spectre of the Past, and I think Timothy Zahn did a masterful job doing so. A lot of content to get through, and I think he did it really well. Kind of dragged a little bit, so I'll only say this was a worth buying as opposed to a booktastic. It would have been silly splitting it into a trilogy, so highly recommend it for those who enjoyed the Thrawn trilogy. This is a good follow-up set 10 years after that. It's really interesting that the greatest threat to the New Republic at this point is the New Republic. I thought that was a really clever twist. I think Timothy Zahn played the political angle really well on this. And then I read Crash Test Demons, which continued a running arc in a previous book really nicely, quite enjoyable, worth reading, worth buying. And then finally, I got round to the book of the month, which is supposed to be the first thing I read in the month, but Vision of the Future took far too long, and that's Stringers by Chris Panatia. I have done a separate video for this one, so go check that out if you want to know what I thought of this. I'll leave a link to that below. Then there you go. And that is everything I read in January, or finished reading in January. So, planned reading for February, bearing in mind it's the 24th now, finally got around to filming. Book of the month, The Management Style of the Supreme Beings by Tom Holt. This was gifted to me for Christmas. I've enjoyed a couple of other Tom Holt's books, Snow White and the Seven Samurai and An Orc on the Wild Side. So looking forward to reading this funny adventure where it looks like God goes on a holiday or retires or something and somebody else steps in who has different ideas about how to run things. Intriguing. And after that, I finally get round to Doctor Who Hunter's Moon. I've waved this one at the camera a few times now. Rory gets captured by some alien hunters who release him on a moon with a bunch of other hapless humans and is hunted. And Amy and the Doctor have got to try and stop this from happening. There's been another similar story to this, The Doctor Trap, but that one targeted the Doctor. This was targeting Rory, so, it's totally different. And after that, I'll then read Vintage Stuff by Tom Sharp. This will be a reread from about 10 years ago. And this farcical story follows a schoolmaster and a pupil as they go to France to apparently rescue a countess from some dastardly plot. But the letters for help were actually forged by a rival master who hadn't quite anticipated how badly things are going to go. Don't remember much about this, but I remember really enjoying it. And after that, Star Trek Web of the Romulans by M.S. Murdoch. The bookmark in here should give away how far I've got through my planned reading for the month. This was picked from the Jar of Mystery, where I have a bunch of random books I don't quite know where to put on my reading lists. And so once every now and again this pops up and I have to put out a name. This was what I pulled out, so go read this one. Don't know anything about it. It's got the original crew there, so lots of overacting. Something about a killer virus that the Romulans are suffering from, and the central computer has fallen in love with Kirk. Okay, right, so anyway, I've only read one other Star Trek book, so I'll be interested to know how this reads, to be honest. And then after that, I'll then read The Accident by Diane Ho. This is a point horror story. Having gone through all the Goosebumps and found them more and more irritating, I was very, very glad to get to the end of the ones that we've got in the house. I haven't read all there are, I just read what we've got, and to be honest, I'm quite happy with the Goosebumps where they are. I don't need to read any more of them. But point horror is supposed to be the next step up, so I've started on those. More misses than hits, I would say. This is a collection of 3 stories. My Secret Admirer by Carol Ellis, which I've read previously, and it was okay. There were some very weird decisions made in that one. Fun House by Diane Ho, same author as The Accident. It was fine until the big reveal, and then I just thought that was completely ridiculous and featured on my worst 10 books of last year. So, Diane Ho has got a lot to prove with The Accident. Is it any better than Fun House? Well, only time will tell. I'm going to try and read this month, if I don't, or if it's going to next month, but I'm expecting to read about 3 of these. I haven't actually looked what the next ones are yet, but I want to read 3 point horrors, but I doubt if I get all 3 done in this month, particularly if I've got the Star Trek to do first. So that's the novels. Obviously, I'm going to continue with the Buffys. This is Food Chain, and currently the only one I've read any of so far this month. Actually started at the end of last month. Don't know what happened there. Almost one a day to barely anything. But anyway, there's a whole bunch of Buffys to get through. This is the one I'm on. I'm still reading the Clash of the Sky Galleons, the Edge Chronicles by Paul Stewart and Chris Riddle, to my son. But I actually read a fair bit of it. That should finish next month if all goes well. Hobby to that. And to my wife, hoping to finish off Shadow Captain, book 2 of the Revenger series. yeah, the plan is to read all 3 of the books of the trilogy. So following on from Avenger, what happens next? And if we do, and I expect fully that we will, we'll move on to Bone Silent. So ignoring the fact this is the 24th, and you can clearly see the bookmark in the top of this book, this is going to be the book we're moving on to in February, which is way ahead of us still. I mentioned every now and again, I am also still reading The Fall of the Governor Part 2 from the Walking Dead series by Robert Kirkman and J. Bryan Singer while I'm boiling the kettle. Slowly getting through that. It's fine, but, you know, something to do while reading the kettle. Something to do while boiling in the kettle. Well, there we go. Quite a lot of books I've just thrown at you there. And I just flew through the Buffys, but there were just too many to break down. And like I say, I can't really remember each one individually. Anything there you liked? Anything there you hated? Anything there you're curious about? Any other comments? Then please do feel free to use the wonderful section down below. But as usual, if you can't say anything nice, then please do keep it to yourself. Thank you. And until next time, see you later. Finished 15 books in the month of June. So I can tell you, I finished the